Welcome to the Middle East Weekly Review, Diplomacy, Economics, and Regional Tensions.
It's a weekly review, apparently filling in for Chella Smith.
That's right. It airs on Fridays, and the focus is squarely on, well, reforms and economics of Iraq based on reports put out by the Middle East news media outlets.
Okay, so aiming to bring the latest on reforms and economics of Iraq. It also mentions that last week's topic was oil, war, and wealth.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really unpack the key insights from this specific review for the week of 27th and help you get a handle on what these headlines actually mean for the region.
Sounds good. Where do we start? The geopolitics seem pretty intense in this one.
Intense is putting it mildly. The source jumps right into this period of really heightened conflict. Iran, the U.S., Israel, it's all happening. Rapid escalation.
You know, what really jumps out is the speed of it all. The reports show this incredibly fast run-up in tension, but then, almost as quickly, a move towards de-escalation. It paints a picture of a very volatile situation.
Absolutely volatile, and driven by some very direct actions. The review mentions U.S. President Trump confirming U.S. forces worked with Israel.
Yeah, coordinated strikes.
And completely destroyed 3 key Iranian nuclear sites. We're talking Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz. These aren't minor facilities?
No, they're central, the big underground enrichment sites.
Yeah.
A huge part of Iran's program.
Trump apparently called the mission very successful, a direct hit on their nuclear ambitions, basically.
And it didn't actually stop there. The reports say Israel then launched another wave of strikes, Natanz again, and Kundab too.
And the U.S. joined in on those as well.
Seems so. Using advanced bunker buster bombs, which is, significant in itself, Iran's reaction was, predictably, quite strong.
I bet. What did they say?
Called it a blatant violation of international law, vowed to respond if provoked again. You can imagine the tension, that the whole region felt like it was on a knife edge.
Okay, so you have these major strikes, this strong rhetoric. How did the rest of the world respond? Was it unified?
Not really. Far from it, actually. You saw quite different takes, which, reflects the complex interests involved.
Like what?
Well, for instance, the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he urged Iran back to the negotiating table.
Okay, so diplomacy first?
Diplomacy first, yes. But he also warned about the serious threat from Iran's program and, crucially, supported the U.S. actions aimed at stopping them getting nuclear weapons. So a bit of both there.
Interesting. What about the UN? They usually call for calm.
They did. Secretary General Guterres condemned the U.S. airstrikes pretty forcefully, called them a dangerous escalation.
Worried it could spiral.
Exactly. That the whole Israeli-Iranian conflict could spiral out of control. He was urging immediate de-escalation, adherence to international law, the usual UN stance, but with real urgency this time.
And Iraq itself. Caught in the middle, geographically speaking.
Their position was, very clear. Strongly condemned the U.S. strikes, called them a threat to regional peace.
So, firmly against the military action.
Yes. Emphasizing military solutions aren't the answer, stressing respect for sovereignty, avoiding attacks on civilian infrastructure, highlighting their own vulnerability in these regional clashes.
That makes sense. What about other players mentioned? Any word from militias or other groups?
Yeah, the review mentions a spokesperson for Iraq's Sayd al-Shuhada brigades. They apparently declined an official comment, which is interesting in itself.
Playing it cautious.
Seems like it. But they did state Iran has the right to respond and recognize the U.S. as, quote, actively involved in the war. That's not insignificant coming from a group like that.
No, definitely not. And what about the Strait of Hormuz? There are always rumors when tensions get this high.
Right. Well, Iran officially denied any plans to close the strait, the vital oil route. They warned against spreading unverified info.
Even though some military figures had hinted at it earlier.
Exactly. So an official denial, but the fact it was even being discussed highlights how sensitive that choke point is for everyone.
Okay, so we've got strikes, condemnations, warnings, and then things take a really sharp turn, don't they? Towards diplomacy.
It's almost jarring, the speed of the pivot. Suddenly, you have President Trump announcing negotiations with Iran are set to begin, the following week.
What was the reasoning given?
The reports suggest his thinking was that both sides, Iran and Israel, were essentially war-weary. And crucially, that the U.S. strikes had probably done enough damage to Iran's nuclear capabilities to, push Tehran towards talking. A strategic calculation, perhaps.
And that led to the ceasefire.
It seems so. A really major breakthrough described in the review. Israel and Iran officially agreeing to a complete and total ceasefire.
Wow. Just like that.
Well, said to begin at about 6 hours from the announcement, ending what the report actually calls the 12-day war, after a phased truce first.
The 12-day war, they already named it.
Apparently so. And Trump praised both sides for their uh, strength, stamina, and wisdom, emphasizing diplomacy won out over what could have been a devastating conflict.
So, stepping back from the details, that shift from intense conflict to a full ceasefire, I mean, that fast, what does that tell us?
That's the really fascinating question, isn't it? It suggests that, despite the rhetoric and the real violence, there might be limits, maybe economic pressures, maybe external nudges, maybe just a sense that objectives were met or that continuing was just too costly for everyone.
So, hidden channels, or maybe just a hard dose of realism kicking in?
Could be. It certainly shows that things can turn on a dime. The underlying motivations might be more complex than just the open conflict suggests. It's a powerful reminder of the dynamics in the region.
Okay, so while all that high-stakes drama is unfolding, the review also shifts focus, right, to Iraq's internal situation, specifically its economy and reforms.
Yes, and it's important to see these things side by side because Iraq is constantly dealing with this dual challenge, navigating these, frankly, huge external pressures while also trying to build something more stable and prosperous internally.
It's a tough balancing act. So what specific economic moves did the review highlight?
Well, one big one was about oil exports. Iraqi and Turkish foreign ministers were meeting again.
Trying to restart the flow from Kurdistan through the Ceyhan port.
Exactly. That pipeline's been shut since March 2023, remember, because of that court ruling and the $1.5 billion compensation claim against Turkey.
Right. So getting that oil flowing again would be huge for revenue.
Huge for revenue, yeah, and potentially ease some regional tensions around energy supply, too.
Okay, what else? There was something about banking in Kurdistan.
Yes, a bit of a strange one. Kurdistan's Ministry of Finance apparently ordered all banks there to suspend currency exchange operations for 2 months.
2 months, any reason given.
No official explanation mentioned in the report, but it notes this happened while there are ongoing financial disputes with Baghdad and, the economic situation in Kurdistan itself isn't great, so possibly related to internal fiscal stress.
Interesting. But overall, Iraq's financial health looked okay. Something about reserves.
Surprisingly strong, actually. The Central Bank of Iraq reported having 13 months' worth of foreign currency reserves to cover imports.
13 months. That's a lot, isn't it?
It is. The global standard recommendation is often around 6 months. So 13 months, even though it was apparently down slightly from 16 months earlier, still indicates pretty robust financial stability, a decent cushion.
That's a positive sign. What about efforts towards longer-term growth? And tackling corruption, always a big issue.
Definitely. On the growth front, a major project got the green light. The World Bank approved $930 million to upgrade Iraq's railways.
The old network. Where does this upgrade cover?
It's a big one. From the port at Kazakaz, way down south, all the way up to Mosul in the north.
So connecting the country, basically.
Connecting the country, improving trade flow significantly, and they expect it to create over 21,000 jobs a year. The hope is it could really transform Iraq into more of a regional transit hub, connecting the Gulf towards Europe. It's a move away from just oil.
And complementing that, something about youth employment?
Yes. The central bank launched something called the Knights program.
Yeah.
The idea is to back young entrepreneurs, giving them loans, training, mentorship.
Trying to spark new businesses.
Exactly. Boost job creation, especially for young people, and again, help diversify the economy. Less reliance on oil revenue is the long-term goal there.
Makes sense. But it wasn't all positive news on the financial front, was it? Something about sanctions busting.
No, there was a negative point, too. The review mentions reports exposing a covert scheme, apparently used to help Iran bypass U.S. sanctions.
How?
By moving money through Iraqi financial systems. It's under investigation now, but it obviously raises big concerns about, banking oversight in the region and how effective sanctions enforcement really is.
Right, that undermines trust. But there were efforts to improve financial integrity, too.
Yes, absolutely. A significant partnership was announced. KeyCard, which is Iraq's biggest digital payment company.
They handle a lot of transactions.
A huge amount. They partnered with a U.S. firm, K2 Integrity. K2 specializes in things like anti-money laundering, financial compliance.
So bringing in expertise to clean things up.
Precisely. It's seen as a really important step to get Iraq's financial practices aligned with global standards, building trust in digital payments, which is vital for, legitimate investment and business growth.
And finally, on the ground level, what about humanitarian aid?
The review mentions Islamic Relief Worldwide was looking for local partners in Iraq
To do what?
to help distribute humanitarian cash aid securely. The goal is just getting funds to vulnerable families quickly and safely, especially with all the economic pressures we've been talking about. It shows that immediate need is still very present.
So, looking at all these economic pieces together, the infrastructure, the youth programs, the anti-fraud efforts, even the humanitarian aid, how does this position Iraq?
Well, it suggests a country seriously trying to lay the groundwork for a more stable future.
Mhm.
Despite all the regional chaos swirling around it, if these reforms take root, if the infrastructure projects deliver, if they can genuinely improve financial transparency, Iraq could become a much more resilient and, frankly, influential player.
Hmm.
But it's happening against a very, very challenging backdrop.
So wrapping this up then, we've gone through this review covering, on one hand, this incredibly rapid military escalation between Israel and Iran, followed by a sudden, almost unbelievable ceasefire, the end of this 12-day war.
Right, a real geopolitical roller coaster.
And on the other hand, we see Iraq, amidst all that, pushing forward with these significant economic reforms, trying to build infrastructure, tackle corruption, create jobs.
Yeah, it really leaves you with some big questions, doesn't it? Like, how will the rest of the world view Middle Eastern conflicts now after seeing this one resolved, or at least paused, so quickly? Does it signal a shift?
And what does that diplomatic shift, that ceasefire, actually mean for Iraq's efforts? Will a calmer neighborhood, assuming it lasts, genuinely help them attract the investment they need?
Will peace finally start to fuel prosperity there? Or is the region's complexity just, morphing into a new form? Lots to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Middle East Weekly Review. We hope breaking down these reports has given you some valuable insights. Chile and the team, they'll be back next Friday for our normal broadcast.
Make sure you join us Fridays, 4 p.m. with Newsroom Updates with Chella Smith, Entertainment